Welcome everyone to the final session for the end of COVID. As you heard in the introduction for this module, this session is really important because I have my friend, mentor, one of my favorite human beings, or I guess I should say women on the planet, because we've gone through an unlearning process with respect to the law too. So one of my favorite women on the planet, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan. And so we've gone through an extensive unlearning process by now. And then also we've sprinkled in some new ideas surrounding what health might look like after we've unlearned. And Dr. Edith has written a book called SuperWellness that I have here, where she talks about the 6 dimensions of health. And so what we're going to be talking about now is the 6 dimensions of health. And then we'll be talking about an offering that we're offering to those who've tuned into the end of COVID thereafter. So I think we should just jump right in to describing the 6 dimensions.
Let's do it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this awesome session. Is our intention that you have a beautiful experience of restoring your natural confidence in the health and wisdom and vitality and well-being that is available inside every human being, or every man or woman and child. So the backstory with SuperWellness is that I have a background for about 2 decades now as a holistic Chinese medicine doctor. And this is the distillation of the absolute best creme de la creme gems that I discovered working with all kinds of cases that were deemed incurable, complex, and also working with high performance athletes to help them achieve the highest levels of elite peak performance in their sports competitions. And what I've discovered is that it turns out that when you have an injury or illness, a lot of our old programming told us, oh my God, it's going to be so complicated. It's going to be so expensive. Or even sometimes we've been told that there's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to have to live with this forever. There's so many myths that I busted for myself as a clinician, watching time after time that so many of these things we've been told are absolutely not true. Not only that, a lot of times when people are on a health journey, they think that, well, if I don't want to do conventional pharmaceutical medicine, I might have to do very expensive alternative therapies. And even that I've discovered sometimes isn't true. It turns out that the true foundation of health and well-being are actually super simple, inexpensive, and abundantly available. And so that's the really good news I want to share with everybody, and not only to tell you the information, but to hopefully inspire everybody to experience it for themselves. Because once you experience it for yourself, there's no more doubt. You're not going to be able to buy into old lies anymore if you've lived that experience directly, personally. So I'm excited to dive into this.
Let's get started. So it is an acronym. Health is an acronym in this case. And so we have 6 different dimensions of that acronym. So let's start with H first. What does H stand for?
HEALTH, just to make sure everyone is spelling the health acronym. By the way, you guys, if you have a notepad, this might be a note-taking moment to write down the HEALTH, because this actually came from over the course of a decade. I was teaching health and wellness classes to my community. I discovered that when we get into groups of like-minded friends and families going through this exploration of health together, it was so much more potent and powerful and effective to do it together in community than to do it alone. And through these groups, I learned so much from the students who took my classes that were exploring these different dimensions of health, that I discovered that actually it's not this hodgepodge, like what are all the lifestyle things you should do to cultivate health and well-being, that there was a sequence that was very important. And then gradually it unfolded into this acronym, HEALTH, which is describing that there's some order of operations, we can say, that is really important as we go on a health journey. To start with H, I'll start with that. H stands for coming home to ourselves. So that means before we look at, which lifestyle change or which diet works for me, or should I do this or should I do that? I mean, I think your audience probably have this experience, right? Trying many different health and wellness tools, but what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Actually, let's take a deep breath and simplify it way down and just check in with ourselves. Let's start with step number 1, which is a consistent practice of body awareness, just checking in with ourselves. And I have kind of a interesting story because I live in San Francisco Bay Area. There's all these tech companies, and sometimes I get invited to do a little inspirational wellness talk at like a brown bag lunch kind of thing. And so I was at this one company, and I was looking around, and people looked kind of like they had food coma right after lunch, and they were just kind of distracted and scrolling on their phones. And I thought, okay, you guys, everybody put your phones down. I want to ask you on a scale of 10, I want to ask you, do you know the battery level of your phone without looking at it right now? Is it 20, 30%? Is it 30, 40%? Where is it at? And 100% of the audience raised their hand. Everyone knew their phone's energy level super well. And so I said, well, okay, on a scale of 10, how's your body's energy level right now? And they stared at me like I was an alien with 3 heads, right? And, I think with your community, people are very body aware. So maybe this is not so surprising to just check in with yourself. But, how often does our culture support that? How often do you go out throughout your day just asking yourself, how am I feeling right now? Body, what do you need right now? Do you need some sunshine? Do you need a little water? Just check in, right? We're always grasping at external experts telling us what to do, but actually the expert is already here. And it can be so simple. And I found that through my working one-on-one and with groups, that it's always that simple. Just to start with, hey, you already know the answers, and you just come back to yourself and check in on a regular basis. So I'll start with something, it seems super simple, but it is an absolute game changer. Just starting with the practice of checking in with yourself and saying, how's my body feeling? On a scale of 10, how's my energy, quantity, and quality right now? What about my mental energies and my emotional energies and my spiritual energies? Just check in. It turns out when you just do something so simple, the answers are already there. When you get into this inner awareness state, the answers come. That's like, you need to hydrate, friend. Your body's dry, or you need to go take a walk, or you need to go lay down and take a rest. Usually the answers are very obvious if you just do a quick check-in 3 times a day, for example, right? And so I often ask people, okay, let's do some journaling. You already know the answers. I bet if we just sit down and do a simple practice and ask yourself, what's giving you better energy on a physical level and what's draining your energy on a physical level, just write down the top 3 things. You already know, right? And then what about on a mental level? What about on an emotional level? What about on a spiritual level? What are the things that are giving you good energy and draining your energy? And people always say, oh, to be healthy, you got to eat right and exercise. So I say, okay, challenge yourself. Don't do anything about your diet or exercise. What about all the things outside of diet and exercise? Because I discovered as a holistic medicine doctor that most people that came to me with chronic, quote unquote, incurable conditions, they were already doing the perfect workout routines and eating quite a healthy diet. But it was all these other things. So when I ask people to just get still, check in with themselves, forget what all the external experts are saying out there, just your own direct experience of life. People are blow their own minds at, yeah, I actually already know what gives me good energy is good quality sleep, fresh air, sunshine, hydration, music, like reading good books, wonderful, inspiring conversations, all these kinds of things that are actually totally free and available all the time. Just go outside and get some sunshine and fresh air. Take a sleep and take a rest if you're tired. Simple stuff like this. And what I often do in the first week of a SuperWellness journey is to simplify it down like this and have people write down this grid of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energies. What gives me energy? What drains my energy? And circle the things that give you energy on all the levels. What are those things? Often it's like fresh air and sunshine, good sleep, hydration, gentle movement, not too much, not too little, very simple stuff like that, and taking deep breaths. And some of us might have a yoga practice, a breathwork practice, a qigong practice. All of these things can be free or almost completely free. And what I discovered is that if you do these things, you'll blow your mind how quickly you'll feel better. If you don't do these things, there's no pill out there that could actually help you feel better. If these basic foundations, I call these essential nutrients for life, aren't in place, there's no pill out there that could ever solve the problem of you not breathing properly, never going outside, not getting sleep chronically. All these foundations for health, it's not complicated. You already know the answers. So let's simplify it down and restore our faith and our confidence in ourselves to create a life of true health and true well-being that is completely free and not dependent on any industries out there.
This is an important requirement to do this, is to slow down, right? Is to slow down and come back to what your body needs. And I think so many of us today, especially because of the last 3 years, are caught up in this go, 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 go mentality, which, as you said, has you grasping at straws for the next thing to help you, right? And all that it requires in most cases is that you slow down and just check in with your body. So I think that's beautiful that coming back home is the first one. And of course, we talked about that earlier in module 9. So then the second one, what does the E stand for?
So the second one, E, stands for environment, because although we're living a life that is tapping into this inside out orientation to health and well-being, we also don't want to make life unnecessarily complicated or create unnecessary suffering for ourselves, right? So what is the easiest low-hanging fruit stuff? It's just optimize your environment. And by that, I mean, go outside and get sunshine and fresh air every day. And to nerd out a bit on the science of sunlight, that the full spectrum sunlight is actually kind of food way beyond what we know about vitamin D. The full spectrum of light, there's a lot of information, and in spiritual and esoteric circles, the sun gazing or solar gazing practice is something I don't recommend you guys do until you've studied it more, and we can dive deeper into it when we do a practical 6-week journey together. So there's a safe way to do solar gazing. You need to study it properly, but there's a lot of depth and richness in understanding how the sun provides a kind of food that optimizing our well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual levels. All of these levels are fed by full spectrum sunlight. And fresh air, breathing fully, the chi, the prana, the oxygen, the goodness that is in nature. When we go to the forest and you just take one deep breath, that environment is feeding you. There's this practice called forest bathing now that has become really popular in holistic circles. And yeah, that's another free thing. Go to the forest and just soak in and bathe in this beautiful energy, completely free. Total game changer for your health. And then at night, sleeping in complete darkness so that you not only generate the optimal amounts of melatonin, which is powerful healing medicine, has been found to be anti-cancer, has been found to be antioxidant and tissue healing, so many things that the melatonin that is generated in your body through exposure to complete darkness. There's tons of science about how powerful that medicine is, completely free. You just need to turn off all the lights. Can you do it? I think you can do it. Right. And when your system is saturated with melatonin, it's been found that it supports the production of what's called DMT. And DMT is the visionary molecule that's become very popular in spiritual circles and is what stimulates the vivid dream time experience and a lot of mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual healing and clarity comes through if you optimize the production of both melatonin and DMT. So you literally start to become a different person. that is recharged, rejuvenated, inspired, excited to be alive, just from simple practices like sunshine during the day and sleeping in complete darkness. Add to that, go while you're outside in nature, take off your shoes and do some grounding. Tons of volumes and volumes of research about something so simple and free that if you just take off your shoes and make physical contact with Mother Earth, that it, within something like 2 seconds, they found using skin conductance tests that your nervous system recalibrates back to tranquility. 2 seconds. And that this effect stabilizes after about 45 minutes, because that's roughly how long it takes a full cycle of blood circulation to happen in the human body. It's free. Everything is free, you guys.
Yeah. And it doesn't require anyone outside of yourself either. That's what's crazy, is the first two things doesn't require even conversations on diet or anything like that yet. It's simple things that you can do literally right now to begin to turn your health around if you have health issues.
So just these first two, H and E, can you guys see how intensely powerful and potent and empowering and inspiring it is to realize that it's that simple? Body awareness, inner awareness, slowing down to check in with yourselves, to do the things that are the super low-hanging fruit things. There's no suffering and sacrifice involved, just self-love and self-care by listening deeply and honoring yourself and doing simple low-hanging fruit things that just feels great. You know, there's no militant discipline involved. Maybe there's a little discipline if you're like on Facebook or Instagram all day and you're like, okay, turn that thing off, go outside, let's go, come on. And then just take some deep breaths and enjoy beautiful sunrise or sunsets, and take off your shoes and, you know, tuck into bed at a decent hour and actually discipline yourself to turn off all the lights so you sleep in complete darkness. Can you guys do it? Yes, you can do it. And if I were to rewrite this book now in today's world, I would add another piece, which is the exposure to EMF, non-native EMF fields. I think that has become an exponentially bigger issue in our world since I wrote the book. And I would also, you know, take some time to maybe get an EMF meter to scan your environment, just to see if you can turn off as many devices as possible so that you return to nature's energy patterns and not be swimming in as much a soup of non-native EMF fields. Yeah.
Yeah. And we learn the importance of that with during A New Health Story with Eileen McCusick talking about the human biofield. And of course, with Dawn and David talking about what really makes us ill. And it's very simple things that you can implement in your environment. Even if you do have Wi-Fi, that looks like turning your Wi-Fi off at night when you're sleeping, or when you're not using it, just turning it off. Simple things like that. These like very simple, again, free things that you can do to help turn your health around. And I
would like to share also that when I think for your audience, you've probably heard some of these things, but I want to challenge you guys. Have you actually stacked all these things together? Like, have you actually just as a inner awareness practice, what happens if you consistently just check in with yourself? How's my energy 3 times a day? And then consistently every day go outside, get some fresh air and sunshine, consistently dim the lights at a decent hour and go to sleep in complete darkness. Every single day, do some barefoot and bare earth time, take some deep breaths outdoor in fresh air, and consistently turn off your Wi-Fi hub when you go to sleep at night. Super simple, right? Doesn't take much time. But have you done all of these things simultaneously? Stacking these simple practices is a complete game changer. You will feel like a totally different person. And I want to share that most of what the scientific literature out there shares in, say, lab animal studies are with animals that are living in artificial lighting with, fluorescents and LEDs. They're not outside getting fresh air and sunshine. They're in these Skinner cage boxes, and then they do these artificial chemical experiments on them, and they think they know something about physiology. The whole thing is like it does apply to that experimental scenario. I'm not saying that they're lying, but does it apply to you, to Alec, to Edith, to all of you guys listening who are living a natural lifestyle of fresh air and sunshine during the day, sleeping restfully in complete darkness, low EMF exposure? You have a completely different physiology now. So you have to really trust your own direct experience, because much of the literatures out there that the so-called experts out there are referencing is based on these experimental data points that are in very unnatural environments, and will blow our own minds if we just return to our natural state of well-being with simple practices like this.
And so we've covered H and E so far, and I think it's important to mention, you've brought up a few times now, a week journey, a 6-week journey, this week, that week. What we're talking about with that, we'll cover at the end after we've covered all the letters of health. So let's move on to A now.
Okay, A takes a little bit of explaining, and those of you, it might be a note-taking moment because there's several things here. A stands for air. A stands for air, which is the breath, breathing deeply. Agua, which is hydration. I know that you guys by now have really studied deeper into hydration. It's not just drinking 8 glasses of water, but getting the cellular hydration working properly and nerding out on the beautiful, very fascinating new signs of water. So air, agua, and my husband came up with this food is one component. So it's not that a healthy diet isn't important. It's just a small piece of a giant pie of all these wonderful, empowering, simple things we can do. It is in there. It's just not as huge of an importance in my experience. Once you stack all these other wonderful things, the eating piece is one small piece, but the mindfulness of how we approach eating with presence and conscious intention is maybe the bigger piece versus what we eat. How we eat, I feel, is a huge piece that I don't see many people talking about out there. And then also recently I added another A, which is amigos, which is something that we really learned a lot about in these last few years when we were told to be afraid of our own bodies, afraid of breathing air, afraid of standing within 6 feet of other humans, like that we really understand now. We learned the hard way how nourishing it is to be in the presence of our amigos. So amigos wasn't listed in the A chapter of the book, but I think it really should be. So let's talk it through like this. The food piece, everybody thinks that to be healthy, you got to eat a healthy diet. And I bet with your audience that you guys have had some wonderful changes in diets that you've experimented with, and you did get some good results, didn't you? So I'm not poo-pooing on healthy diets. It does help. But let's put it into its proper context, because that's a lot what SuperWellness is putting all of these components that maybe in the past we grasped at. It's like, oh, okay, there's a coherent, cohesive, integrated understanding of how to build a foundation for lifelong health and well-being. And where does food fit into the big picture? Let's talk about that for a second. I want to ask you guys this. I don't want you to test it out for yourself, but if you had to live without physical food, but you had good water access, how long can a typical human being live for with just water and no food? If you had to. Again, don't try this at home without, like some support and, like preparation, obviously. Water fasting, by the way, for those that are interested in fasting, is something to take very seriously, to kind of work your way into it, because many of us hold a lot of toxins in our body, and if you do too much detox too quickly, it can be dangerous. So I want nothing but the very best for everyone that's listening. So please be very respectful of the process of fasting and detox to kind of work your way into it, and don't go 0 to hero. Okay, you guys? So question, how long can one live for with just water and no food if you had to?
I already know the answer though, so that's not fair, but I'll just answer 3 weeks.
Yeah, roughly 3 weeks. Some people say 30 days because it's been said that Jesus fasted for 30 days. Many spiritual seekers will prepare themselves and get themselves trained to the level where they can do a 30-day water fast, because that supposedly cleans and purifies your entire system so that you can get the spiritual guidance in a very clean and clear way. So in spiritual circles, it's not uncommon that you hear people at a very advanced level try a 30-day fast. But I was doing a survival, outdoor wilderness survival training course, and the park ranger guy that was training us said that in their circles, they say usually about 3 weeks if you have access to good water. How long can you live for without water access, according to the general understanding?
I'm going to say 3 days.
Roughly 3 days is what they say, although obviously that fluctuates a lot depending on your environment. If you're in an environment where you can have like moisture in the air, or if you're in the desert. Also, my experience as a long-term meditator, when I go on meditative retreat, I notice that the quality of my hydration is very different if I'm in a very peaceful meditative state versus when I'm in the city, like hustling around deadlines and traffic, and that changes a lot. And also my exposure to non-native EMF fields. If I'm bathing in nature with like a secret spring versus if I'm sitting next to a Wi-Fi hub all day, which is actually dehydrating to my cells, that changes. So it's a big range. But for the purpose of this illustration, let's say 3 days. So let's say 30 days without food and 3 days without water. My question to you is it possible that hydration is possibly 10 times as important for your health as healthy nutrition?
I would say that's totally possible and very probable, actually.
Right. So many of you guys who are in the audience probably have nerded out on different kinds of diets. You've read books or watched documentaries about, like the different types of healthy diets that could work for you. You've probably tried a bunch of different diets. My question to you is, have you spent 10 times as much energy studying healthy water and healthy hydration? That would just be proportionate. I think it's time for us to put things back to its proper context. Healthy diet is healthy nutrition is important, but I think we're discovering that the new science of water says there's a lot that we ought to be learning and focusing on with healthy hydration, which is so much more than just drinking eight ounce. What do they say? Eight ounce glasses.
Yeah, 8 ounce glasses of water, I think is the, yeah.
Right, but what kind of water?
Exactly.
And is that water being absorbed and hydrating into your cells? Is that water working properly in your cells?
Are you setting an intention for your water? Are you, programming your water, if that's what you want to call it? Are you developing a relationship with your water, especially given that we're made up of water?
Yes. So that is something that there's a lot to study there, but I just love to play with it and experience it and have the direct experience in my body of what happens when I drink different types of water. What happens when I nurture a conscious relationship with the water that I drink, and with how the intention of the water moves through my body, and recognizing that the vast majority of my body molecules, like 99+% of the molecules in my body, is water. The human body is basically a giant vessel of water that's holding information, that's supporting all of the cellular biology, right? So that's a huge topic, and I am excited for all of us to actually play and experience it directly in our lives. What happens when we play with the water and hydration piece beyond the food piece? Now, with the food piece, I've also discovered that sometimes it's how we eat versus what we eat, just bringing a delicious mindfulness into the eating practice, slowing it down again, chewing every bite 30 times, 50 times, 100 times. And so in the 6-week SuperWellness journey, there's actually a whole class in there where we take time to practice mindful eating. And I started teaching these classes almost 10 years ago. And years later, people still write back to me. They've moved out of town, they've moved on, started families, changed careers, and they still are in tears telling me that the mindful eating experience was the most game-changing experience of any wellness or any retreat or workshop they ever took, because it's so profound to slow down and actually taste life properly. So yeah, with the food piece, focusing on how we eat, maybe more than what we eat, and then the hydration, really like giving it its proper value in the conversation of health and well-being again. Now let's move on. What about air? How long can a human being live without breathing air?
Well, it's unfair because I know who Wim Hof is, but let's say three minutes without air.
Yeah, so that's what the park ranger says. In a wilderness survival situation, he said that they generally say 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and roughly 3 weeks in the outdoor survival situation without food. That's the general guidelines. So my question to you is it possible that breathing and fresh air, that's maybe 1,000, how many minutes are there in a day? 1,440, 1,440 times? As important as hydration, which is 10x as important as food and nutrition? Let's put all of this back into its proper context. If you had to prioritize, I would say air first, agua second, and is third. Get your A's back into its proper order. That's a little saying we have in SuperWellness. Get your A's in order. Air first, then agua second, and is third. And then the park ranger that taught the survival wilderness class, he said in their circles, the general understanding is that the human spirit doesn't want to stay around very long if it loses human contact for 3 years. That's the general wisdom they have. So it's like,
we're 3 years into this, right? We're 3 years
yes.
into this whole thing, and there's so many people, many of whom might be watching this, that feel disconnected from community too.
Yeah, so if you're feeling low energy and a lot of despair and depression and anxiety, just know that that is a healthy response to the situation. And I want to just send you my love and my respect and just my support. And I want all of us to come back together and be fully human again, to recognize that this isn't some optional thing, that in survival tactics training, they talk about this as a key element of human survival and thriving. So I don't want to talk about survival. I want to talk about optimal well-being and thriving. So he says 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and then 3 years without social contact. That's when we get ourselves into trouble. And so, yeah, get your A's in order. It's about air, agua, and amigos. All of these are essential nutrients for a human being to thrive. And so I want to make sure that you take these things seriously, although we don't have to be so serious about it. We can have fun. We can have fun going outside and doing some Qigong and breathwork practice and get very blissed out. My friend Wim Hof calls it get high on your own supply. Right? Like people are always like, Dr. Edith, why are you grinning all the time? Because I'm actually like a little bit high all the time.
Yeah.
I breath work.
Just from breath. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of these things, many people out there suffer from depression, anxiety, and it's not that some of the other therapies that you've been exploring, it's not that they don't work. I'm not going to poo-poo on them. It's just that some of these things are maybe more direct and get you very quick results. Focus on your breath, your hydration, mindful eating practice, and get your amigos, get your social circle up leveled. And once again, you see the HEA, each of these stages, you keep stacking and stacking, and you start to unfold and blossom into a level of awesomeness in your life that you couldn't perceive before. You become a completely different person, so strong and stable and integrated and inspired from the inside out. So it's a beautiful thing. All free, by the way.
All free so far. Yeah, every bit of it's free so far. So L. What about L?
L. So after you've stacked all these wonderful things, now you have the brightness, the vitality, the energy. Now let's look at what's actually weighing you down? What's all the heaviness in your life that we should let go of and lighten up? So L stands for lightening up. And by lightening up, a lot of people think I should do a detox or a cleanse or juice cleanse or something like that. Many people come to my classes, many of my clients that I work with one-on-one, they've done all kinds of juice cleanses and they're like, yeah, I always fall off the bandwagon, or I have all these awful detox symptoms. It's very uncomfortable and it's not sustainable. It was an awful experience. So the reason that L happens after HEA is that I find that it's really important to build up the good stuff first before you let go of the so-called bad stuff, if you will. I don't like to think in these very dualistic black and white terms, but the point is that even in nutrition circles, nutritionists often talk about this thing called the crowding out method. This idea that if you don't want to eat too many junk foods, if somebody said, don't eat junk food, don't eat junk food, don't eat junk food, you're going to be always thinking about the junk food. It's hopeless. That's not a good strategy. Instead, hey, eat your fruits, your veggies, your healthy stuff, eat the good stuff. And then you're satiated with so much good stuff that the other stuff just fizzle away with no willpower or militant discipline needed. So many people are still feeling like they have to be so militant and rigid and so disciplined. And it's like discipline is good to kind of get you to shift a practice, but then what is going to be long-term sustainable? We're talking about the long game here. We're talking about tuning in and having it be a really solid foundation for health and well-being that creates lifelong wellness for you. So none of this is about short-term solutions. It's about what is really stable and sustainable for you. And so after you do HEA, naturally, I think you'll be like, oh, I don't really feel hungry or cranky or needing to do all this emotional eating and stress eating that I used to do. And it feels like a natural next step, a natural unfoldment, and maybe try a juice cleanse and just see how it goes with a sense of openness and curiosity, of deep listening to what is the most kind and loving thing that your body is asking for. Right? Because you've established that deep body awareness. You've built up so many good practices. And by the way, the breath work, it turns out that through a breathing practice is something like 70% of the body's cleaning and detox mechanisms happens through the breath. Only 30% happens through sweating, peeing, and pooping. Did you guys know this? So you all know, I hope this is not too TMI for your audience, you all know how not good it feels if you're constipated and can't detox that way, right? So that's a huge piece to make sure you have good at least daily, if not 2 or 3 times even, bowel movements, right? But if you are blocked up, you feel really not good. Well, most people out there, it turns out, are blocked up and not breathing fully and deeply.
Think how many people have shallow breaths because they're not aware and they're just in that perpetual state of fight or flight. So after you've come back home, you've changed your environment, you've aligned your A's, you come into this and it becomes almost effortless with L, with lightening up.
Yes. So because you've already done a lot of cleanup of your systems through deep breaths, through healthy hydration, through slowing down with mindfully eating, by the time you reach the L component, then you're going to naturally, like, it feels good to do some juicing once in a while or some broth cleanses, right? So there's nothing rigid here in this particular stage of the journey. We often divide up the lightening up the liquid days into different stages. If it's your first time, maybe just do smoothies and soups. If you feel confident to go deeper, maybe do juices and broths. And then for the next stage, maybe a single ingredient juice, like just celery juice or just like lemon water and some broth, something like that. I always like to mix in the warm broths because as a Chinese medicine practitioner, the balance of hot and cold is really important. And sometimes for a lot of people's constitutions, just a pure raw juicing is not the best optimal balance for their system. So we listen for, we invite everyone to customize. And for those who are very advanced, you can try a water cleanse. Again, pure water fasting can cause a lot of detox. So that's why we stack all these wonderful lifestyle practices and we listen deeply to what is just the right, appropriate next stage. This is not a competition. There's no going zero to hero and then killing ourselves. It's just about what is the most kind and loving next phase of unfoldment on our health and wellness journey. So that after one round, you're like, wow, next time I'd like to clean a little deeper, a little deeper. You've got this body for the rest of your life. Let's take beautiful care of it. Now, with lightening up, when we're doing this very light juicing or water fasting, whatever level you're doing, I don't know if you've had this experience. Sometimes if there's a lot of stressful things, you do stress eating because you know that eating dense, heavy foods dulls your senses. Sometimes the stressful stuff, whether stressful media, stressful conversation, stressful movies, stressful books that like murder mystery books or something that you had that experience? You're reading like a murder mystery book and
Absolutely.
you just eat a huge bag of chips because
Yes.
it's like that stress, right? So the opposite is also true. When you're doing a juice cleanse, you become hypersensitive. All of your systems become more cleaned up and aware. And so to be kind and gentle, I also recommend lightening up the information that you expose yourself to. So this is a perfect week to also do a digital detox. Minimal interaction with all the online media stuff, whatever you need just to keep life functioning, but really shut down your exposure to all of the stressful information and be super mindful of the quality of music. Really think about what kind of music programs your water for optimal health and well-being. Really think about be very intentional with the conversations that you interact with, because now you can really feel the difference with all of that. And then when you choose to break your fast, that first experience of eating a solid meal again is a profound experience. Many people cry and many people laugh because what I usually recommend is that now that your senses are really heightened, right? Have you had that experience after a juice cleanse? Your senses are smelling everything.
The food tastes so good in that moment. You have such an appreciation to be able to eat food after you've had that fast that it's like, wow, this experience, it completely transforms your relationship with food. You naturally, by way of fasting, after you've already, of course, discovered with like intentional eating, but by way of doing a fast, you naturally start eating intentionally because you really appreciate every single bite of that food.
Yes. By the way, if I'm doing just a high level summary with the A, we have this thing called the FAN diet, which is just to listen for 3 simple things. It's basically a non-diet. Is your food fun and tasty? When you eat it, do you feel a sense of aliveness? And does it cause no negative effect? So it's kind of a Venn diagram: fun and tasty, alive, no negative effect. If it fulfills all 3 rules, we're a fan. If it breaks any of these rules, we're not a fan. Can you guys do that? I think you can do that. Just listen for fun and tasty, alive, no negative effects. And that sensation is heightened after you've done a juice cleanse because you can smell and taste and feel your body so much more clearly. So it really awakens the inner nutritionist now. And this saves you a lot of money in the future because you really know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You don't have to grasp at so many expensive things out there to discover what works. And then to listen for that consistently. Maybe do something like a seasonal juice cleanse. As the seasons change, your body will naturally be requesting different kinds of nutrition. And for the ladies out there, a lot of times at different weeks of the cycle, there's some slight variations of the nutrition that is needed. And for all of us, if you're doing heavy duty athletic training versus a lot of mental work versus, when you're getting more sunshine versus less sunshine, there's some variations there. And so by listening deeply within, you will never go wrong. The answers are already available if we just can reestablish that communication again. So this L week is a lot about letting go of all the densities, the heaviness, and actually reestablishing the proper connection and communication so that we can listen for that inner guidance. And honestly, it's very efficient and saves you a lot of money long term.
So just to recap so far, we have coming back home, we have environment, we have aligning all of our A's, which is agua, air, amigos, and umph.
Let's
And
do
then,
that in the right order.
yeah, sorry, air.
Air first, agua second, is third, and amigos also.
And then amigos. Okay. And then lightening up is L. And then what is T?
So after HEAL, notice that spells heal. Now you have a whole system that has been so dramatically up-leveled that we can do what's the true work that many people in personal and spiritual growth circles want to do, which is looking at your thoughts and beliefs and aligning with your inner truth. So T stands for thoughts and T stands for truth. In these circles, we all know that mind masteries and working with our thoughts and beliefs and living a life of honesty and truth and integrity. We know that this is the foundation of health and well-being. But when I go to personal growth workshops where people are working on breaking old limiting belief systems, for example, questioning their stressful thoughts. For example, Byron Katie has a wonderful way of questioning your stressful thoughts and aligning with your inner truth that I really love. And I noticed that the people that came to it that have a healthy lifestyle, they had breakthroughs after breakthroughs after breakthroughs. The people that their bodies look really inflamed, which means that their brains and their nervous systems are probably very inflamed, they would struggle and they really had to they're trying really hard, but that inner guidance and that intuitive awareness was just not communicating to them as clearly. So why do we make this unnecessary struggle for ourselves? It turns out that by doing HEAL first, then the guidance system is very clean and clear, and the real work can be supported and facilitated. So this whole mental, emotional, spiritual work depends on having a foundation of the physical energy systems being optimized to support and facilitate really the real juicy work, which is this T section, aligning, working with our thoughts and aligning with our inner truth. And then we have different wonderful practices that I think are just very practical and useful for listening to when we're running stressful thoughts, and different practices that we can work to harmonize and alchemize and shift these things to break free from the limitations of old stressful thoughts, and different practices for listening to our inner guidance systems that are like quick, simple meditative practices that anybody can do. You don't have to be a long-term meditator to listen within to get that inner guidance. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think for the audience, you probably see so far how we're taking the knowledge that we've shared in A New Health Story Part 1 and 2 and distilling it down into practical solutions. And again, it's all free. It's all stuff that you can implement in your own lives right now. So the last one, number 6, H.
The last one, when we've worked through stressful, limiting thoughts and living a life of honesty, truth, and integrity, we drop into our heart and we naturally radiate a beautiful energy from our hearts. And I think your audience probably knows there's a lot of research from the Institute of Heart Math that shows that the heart radiates a coherent energy field that is palpable to everyone around you, right? Like we've all had this experience. We say, oh my God, that guy has such a big heart. This is such a warm-hearted person that I just love being around them. Well, what is that? It turns out that is something that we can nurture and cultivate within ourselves. And the journey of HEALT helps us to drop into this heart coherent state. And there's specific practices of heart meditation that allows us to anchor deeper and deeper into the state. And what happens is if you walk into a room, one person that is emanating a heart coherent field can actually activate other people to drop into their most coherent state too. And this is how, as cheesy as it sounds, this is the practical way that we can create a world of peace and well-being and harmony by each of us doing our own inner work, emanating beautiful coherent energies into our families, into our communities, into the world, and that spontaneously activates other people to also show up as their best, most harmonious self. And this is the most potent and powerful activism there is on the planet. And I congratulate and honor and respect so much everyone here who wants to walk this path with us, to step into a space of coherence and harmony and well-being and create a much more beautiful world for ourselves and our children and all the future generations.
Yeah, change yourself to change the world. And once you heal yourself and you set the example, people will naturally want to gravitate and be like, wait, what's up with you? Why are you so bright and vibrant? What's going on with you? I want to know what you do.
And I would say a lot of what, I've been working with people as a holistic medicine practitioner for over 20 years. And a lot of, at the end of the day, people may come in with a migraine headache or back pain or high blood pressure or, supposedly complex incurable autoimmune conditions in super finger quotes. And when I get to know them, there's always something like a heartbreak or a heartache or something heavy in their hearts that is wanting to be listened to and honored and healed. And so these physical symptoms, when we peel away the layers, it's not about symptom suppression, it's about listening. Listen, there is wisdom, there's intelligence, there's beauty that wants to unfold in the process of healing. And so in this last step of the HALTH, this last H stands for heart, dropping into our heart to listen to that deeper level of wisdom and guidance that is wanting to be heard so much. And a lot of what happens is a soulful experience of living a life that is much more true and honest, and depending on your spiritual beliefs, really living into your divine purpose in this life. And there's, once again, simple meditative techniques of dropping into the heart for that inner wisdom and inner guidance that I wish was common across the world, because we're always up in everybody's business. We're confused. We're indecisive. We don't know what to do with our lives. And then we play this thing called the blame game. We don't take full personal responsibility for ourselves because we don't have these simple practice. It turns out it's so simple to drop into the heart and just listen to that inner voice, that inner guided system, to get that inner clarity, so that we don't, this is the end of confusion and the beginning of true well-being and true peace on the planet.
Should have named it the end of confusion. I think that's the more appropriate title.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So with all that being said, now let's talk about this 6-week journey that you and I will be guiding the men and women who'd like to opt in, who are interested in what we're saying here, who are wanting to take all that we've unlearned and learned and distill it down into these practical 6 dimensions of health for a 6-week journey. And that will begin on August 22nd. And so on August 22nd, beginning on that day, we'll have an offering, the 6 dimensions of health, where we guide you all through each of those dimensions. And it starts on the 22nd. There'll be another class on the 26th. So there'll be 2 classes per week. And then another one on the 29th of August. And then the 2nd of September to round out week 2. And then the 5th of September, we'll meet for pillar A. And then we'll close that week out on the 9th, take off a week from the 12th through the 16th. And then begin again with L on the 19th and the second class for that week on the 23rd. And then the 26th of September is T. And then we'll finish on the 30th to round out week 5. And then the 3rd of October is when we'll begin the last dimension, H. And then we'll graduate on the 7th.
Yeah. I'm so excited to go through this journey together with this super next level community that we're building together. And the reason we have 2 classes a week is so that we can introduce the topics and go deep and nerd out on the concepts a bit in the first class, have a little time for a Q&A, but really break it into the community interactive piece, which is where we do most of the learning, when people share their direct experience of applying these practices in their lives. And the mind-blowing insights. It's so wonderful to be in a community where we can share these insights and, and share our experience directly. Because a lot of what happens is through the direct experience, if you have a chance to debrief together with a like-minded community, we can really hold each other up and level up together. And it's a wonderful experience. And super excited to share with you guys.
And it's always better to go like to do something like this with other people who are doing the journey with you, because it's so much more validating, especially if there are points that might be a little bit challenging as you're undoing some of the conditioning that you've dealt with, and you can lean on other people who are going through the course with you. And that's what makes this experience so powerful. And so again, that offering, you can find all the details for it below this video. And of course, we'll send out an email about it too, just after this. And it will begin on August 22nd. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah, so excited. See you in class.